The transaction happened in a warehouse that smelled like salt water and diesel fuel. No cameras, no paperwork. The kind of place where questions died before they were asked. The seller was an old man with careful hands. He unwrapped the object slowly, layers of cloth peeling away like skin. The artifact underneath looked wrong. Not ancient, not modern, just wrong. Dark stone carved with patterns that hurt to follow symbols that didn't belong to any language the Vought representatives recognized. "Where did you get this?" The lead buyer was young corporate trained, already thinking about the quarterly report. The old man smiled without showing teeth. "Does it matter?" "Everything matters. Chain of custody, export licenses. This came from no customs office." The old man's accent was difficult to place. Southeast Asian, maybe, or something older. "This came from a place your regulations do not reach." The second buyer, older and more cautious, leaned closer. He'd worked R&D for Vought long enough to recognize when something defied normal classification. The artifact radiated wrongness, the way a furnace radiated heat. "What is it?" "You asked for something that could interact with Compound V. Something organic." The old man's fingers traced the symbols without touching them. "I delivered. What it is, that is not my concern. Only that you pay, and that you leave quickly." The corporate buyer pulled out a scanner. Radiation levels normal. Electromagnetic signature negligible. Chemical composition inconclusive. Every reading came back as variations of unknown. "We'll need to run more tests before—" "No tests here." The old man's voice went flat. "You take it or you leave it. But if you take it, you leave now." Money changed hands. Cryptocurrency untraceable already laundered through 3 shell corporations before it reached the old man's account. The Vought team packed the artifact into a reinforced case designed for biological hazards. None of them noticed the way the old man watched them leave his expression somewhere between pity and relief. 3 days later, in a facility that existed on no official map, Dr. Sarah Chen stared at the artifact through 6 inches of reinforced glass. The black site operated outside American territorial waters, outside jurisdiction, outside oversight. Perfect for the kind of research that generated either breakthroughs or body counts. "Initial analysis confirms biological properties," she said into the recording device. Her voice was steady, despite the migraine building behind her eyes. Every hour spent near the artifact made the headache worse. "But the structure doesn't match any known organic compound. It's like looking at a cell that evolved in a different universe." Her assistant, Marcus Webb, looked up from his console. "The interaction with Compound 5 is off the charts. It's not rejecting it. It's hungry for it." Rasa. "Prepare the subject." Subject 17 was a B-list supe whose powers barely qualified him for Vought's 3rd-tier superhero program. Enhanced durability, minor strength augmentation, the kind of abilities that got you mall appearances and corporate event bookings. He'd volunteered for this trial after being told it could amplify his gifts. Make him valuable. Make him matter. They didn't tell him about the previous 16 subjects. The procedure was simple in theory. Surgical implantation of a fragment from the artifact, combined with a concentrated Compound V booster. The fragment was small, no larger than a fingernail, but it took 3 doctors to handle the extraction process. The moment they separated it from the main artifact, the temperature in the room dropped 15 degrees. Subject 17 was already sedated when they made the first incision. The fragment went in smooth nestling against his liver like it belonged there. The Compound 5 followed, injected directly into the bloodstream. For 6 minutes, nothing happened. Dr. Chen reviewed the monitors. Heart rate elevated but stable. Brain activity normal. Cellular regeneration accelerating as the Compound 5 took effect. Standard response patterns for enhanced subjects. Then the temperature dropped again. Subject 17's eyes opened. Not the groggy half-awareness of someone waking from sedation. Just open, alert. Looking at nothing in particular, his vital signs flatlined for exactly 3 seconds. When they resumed, they were different. Heart rate slower, almost reptilian. Brain activity spiked across regions that shouldn't have been active during sedation. The cellular regeneration stopped following predictable patterns. "Get a medical team in there," Chen ordered. Before anyone could move, Subject 17 sat up. The restraints should have held him. They were rated for Soup's twice his strength rating. He tore through them like they were paper. The medical team that entered the room found him standing in the center, completely still. One of the nurses approached cautiously. "Sir, can you hear me? What's your name?" Subject 17's head turned. The movement was wrong. Too smooth, too precise. When he smiled, it wasn't his smile. "My name?" The voice that came out was his, but the cadence was foreign, ancient, amused. "I had many. But you may call me Sukuna." The nurse took a step back. "Sir, you need to—" The scream lasted less than 2 seconds. By the time security arrived, there was blood on 3 walls and silence everywhere else. Dr. Chen watched through the security feed as Sukuna walked toward the camera. His movements were casual, unhurried. He looked directly at the lens. The smile widened. "This world bought the wrong god," he said. Then he reached up and crushed the camera with one hand. The facility's emergency lockdown engaged automatically. Blast doors, containment protocols, fail-safes built on 30 years of managing superhuman threats. None of it mattered. The last transmission from the black site was 7 seconds of static, a sound like tearing metal. And then nothing. When Vaught's cleanup team arrived 18 hours later, they found empty rooms, dark hallways, and a lingering smell like burned copper. No bodies, no blood, no evidence that anyone had died there, except for the silence. In the center of the main laboratory, someone had arranged the security badges of the entire facility staff in a perfect circle. In the middle of the circle sat the artifact, now cracked open like an egg. The Vought executive who led the cleanup team made 2 decisions. First, seal the site. Second, classify everything under the highest level of corporate secrecy. He made a 3rd decision on the flight back to the mainland. He decided not to tell anyone that on his way out he'd heard laughter echoing from somewhere deep in the facility. Distant, patient, waiting. Ashley Barrett had learned to recognize the specific quality of silence that preceded a corporate apocalypse. This was that silence. The emergency meeting room on the 73rd floor of Vought Tower was designed to convey power. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. Conference table made from a single piece of Brazilian hardwood. Chairs that cost more than most people's cars. None of it helped when the silence stretched past the 30-second mark. "Say that again." Ashley's voice came out steady despite the tightness in her chest. Slowly. The security chief, a former CIA operative named Marcus Reeves, kept his hands flat on the table. "The offshore facility went dark 18 hours ago. Cleanup team arrived 6 hours ago. Everyone's gone. No bodies, no witnesses. We have 1 surviving piece of footage." He tapped his tablet. The screen appeared on the wall behind him. Static, then a hallway camera feed. A figure walking toward the lens. Male average height, moving with the kind of relaxed confidence that didn't belong in a facility where alarms were screaming. The figure looked up. The face was Subject 17's, but everything else was wrong. The smile. The eyes. The way he moved like he was strolling through a park instead of a maximum security research installation. Then the voice. Clear, amused, utterly calm. "This world bought the wrong god." The screen went black. Ashley's migraine, which had been manageable 10 minutes ago, upgraded itself to catastrophic. How many people saw this? 7. All in this room or already neutralized? Neutralized. Ashley tasted bile. "You mean disappeared?" "I mean contained." Reeves leaned forward. But we have a bigger problem. Subject 17's registration is in the system. Facial recognition software is going to flag him the second he shows up anywhere with a camera. Then we scrub him from the system. Already done. But if he's a soupy gone rogue, he's not. The voice came from the far end of the table. Dr. Patricia Vance, head of R&D, looked like she hadn't slept in days. I reviewed Dr. Chen's notes before we lost contact. Whatever that artifact was, it wasn't Compound V. It was something else. Something that used 17's body like a doorway. Ashley's phone buzzed. A text from her assistant, Homelander, asking about the emergency meeting. Wants to know if he should be concerned, she typed back quickly. Routine crisis management, under control. Neither part was true. Okay. Ashley stood up, which meant everyone else had to look attentive. This is what we're going to do. Public narrative isolated bioterrorism incident at an overseas medical facility. American casualties threat neutralized. We've already got local authorities on payroll to back it up. If anyone asks about Subject 17, he never existed. His records are corrupted data, a clerical error. And if he shows up, Reeves asked, then we have the 7 handle it quietly. No press, no cameras. A containment operation, not a battle. Dr. Vance cleared her throat. Ashley, you don't understand. Whatever is wearing 17's face, it's not a standard soup. The energy readings before we lost contact were, I don't care about energy readings. Ashley's voice went sharp. I care about the narrative. And the narrative is that Vought International has everything under control. Because if we don't control this story, it controls us. Are we clear? Heads nodded. The meeting dispersed. Ashley stayed behind, watching the frozen image of Subject 17's smile on the screen. She thought about power, about the difference between what was real and what people believed was real. In her experience, the second one mattered more. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a call. Homelander's private line. She answered on the third ring, forcing brightness into her voice. Hey, I was just about to call you. You're lying. Homelander's voice was pleasant, which meant he was 3 steps from fury. What's going on? Routine situation. Overseas facility had a containment breach, already resolved. Ashley? He drew out her name like he was testing how much pressure the syllables could take before breaking. I can hear your heartbeat from here. You're terrified. So either tell me the truth or I'll assume you're hiding something important. And we both know how I handle that. Ashley closed her eyes, pictured the smile on Subject 17's face, made a decision. We had a subject go rogue. Enhanced individual, potentially dangerous, but we're tracking him and we have protocols in place. Name, classified right now. I'll brief the 7 if he becomes a public threat. Silence on the other end. Ashley counted her heartbeats, tried to keep them steady. Fine. Homelander's tone shifted to something approaching boredom. But if this becomes my problem, I'm handling it my way, not yours. The call ended. Ashley sat down and tried to remember when fear had stopped being an occasional visitor and started being her permanent state. Sometime around the 3rd cover-up, probably. Or the 5th firing. Or the uncountable crisis where the solution had been money and threats and hope that reality would stay hidden long enough for the next quarterly report. She pulled up the morning schedule. 3 interviews, a shareholder meeting, a photo opportunity with a charity that Vought definitely wasn't using for tax evasion. Everything normal. Everything controlled. Her assistant knocked before entering. The press release about the overseas incident is ready, and Homelander's scheduled for a broadcast tonight. He wants to address the nation about public safety. Of course he does. Ashley rubbed her temples. Make sure the talking points emphasize strength, security, and unwavering protection. The usual. Already drafted? Ashley pulled up the broadcast script on her tablet. It was perfect. Reassuring without being specific. Strong without acknowledging weakness. The kind of message that people wanted to hear whether it was true or not. She thought about the footage again. The smile. The voice. The absolute certainty in those words. This world bought the wrong god. Her phone lit up with another notification. Emergency alert from Vaught's internal monitoring system. Facial recognition hit. Subject 17 spotted 40 minutes ago in downtown Manhattan, then gone before security arrived. Ashley deleted the alert. Made a note to have the monitoring system flagged for maintenance. Sometimes information was more dangerous than ignorance. She stood up, straightened her suit, and prepared to spend another day pretending that everything was under control. It was what she was good at. It was all she had. Across the city, in a studio designed to make him look like both a protector and a god Homelander, reviewed his broadcast script. The words were fine, safe, boring. He changed them anyway, adding phrases about strength, about unwavering justice, about how nothing threatened America as long as he was watching. The producers didn't argue. They never did anymore. He thought about Ashley's phone call. The fear in her voice, the way she'd tried to hide something. Homelander had been lied to his entire life. By Vought. By handlers. By people who claimed to care about him. He'd learned to hear lies the way other people heard music. And Ashley had been lying. Something was wrong. Something she thought was too dangerous to tell him. That was offensive. He adjusted his cape, checked his reflection, and stepped onto the set. The cameras went live. America watched. He smiled, the practiced expression that made people feel safe. Good evening, America. I want to talk to you about security, about protection, and about the absolute certainty that you are safe under my watch. The words flowed easily. He'd said variations of them 1,000 times. But while his mouth delivered reassurance, his mind worked through Ashley's hesitation. The fear. The secret. There was a problem. Something she thought he couldn't handle. He'd find it. And when he did, he'd prove that nothing in this world could challenge him. Not terrorists, not rogues, not enhanced individuals. Nothing. The broadcast ended. Applause from the studio audience. Homelander waved, nodded, and left the stage. His assistant tried to brief him about the next day's schedule, but he wasn't listening. He was listening to the city instead. Millions of heartbeats. Thousands of conversations. Sirens, traffic construction, the ambient noise of 8 million people living compressed lives. And underneath it all, barely perceptible something else. A sound that didn't belong. Laughter, maybe. Or just an anomaly in the acoustic landscape. So faint he couldn't be certain he'd heard it at all. Homelander tilted his head, focusing his hearing. But the sound was gone if it had ever been there. He was left with only the familiar cacophony of the city and the growing certainty that something had changed. He just didn't know what yet. Manhattan smelled like exhaust and ambition. Sukuna walked through it with the ease of someone who had conquered cities before, though those cities had been built from wood and stone instead of steel and glass. The body he wore moved well enough. Young, healthy, enhanced by whatever chemical miracle this world called Compound Vi. Adequate. He'd inhabited worse vessels over the centuries. The memories lingering in the meat were simple things. Fear of inadequacy. Desire for recognition. The small desperations of a small man. All of it irrelevant now. He stopped at the corner of Fifth Avenue and watched the screens. They were everywhere. Massive displays mounted on buildings, smaller ones in shop windows, tiny rectangles clutched in every passing hand. All of them showing variations of the same thing. Faces, products, promises, and gods. Not real gods. Sukuna knew the difference. These were manufactured divinity. Enhanced humans playing dress-up, their images plastered across every surface. The 7 they called themselves. Each one posed like conquerors, their expressions carefully calibrated for maximum appeal. A woman walked past, wearing a shirt with one of their faces on it. Homelander, according to the text. Blue suit, red cape smile that aimed for reassuring and landed somewhere near threatening. The slogan underneath read, "I'm watching over you." Sukuna smiled. The irony was exquisite. A god who needed constant reassurance that he was godly. A protector whose power depended entirely on being watched, acknowledged, celebrated. Remove the cameras, and what remained? Just another creature wearing a crown it hadn't earned. He continued walking. The city revealed itself in layers. Surface level, everything gleamed. Clean streets, orderly crowds. The appearance of civilization functioning exactly as designed. But underneath, in the spaces between the manufactured perfection, reality leaked through. A protest 3 blocks north. Signs about corporate oversight. Soup accountability demands for transparency. Police in riot gear creating a perimeter while a news helicopter circled overhead. The protesters chanted slogans. The police looked bored. Everyone was performing their assigned role. Sukuna found a vantage point on a parking garage roof. Watched the theater unfold. The protest was small, contained ultimately meaningless. But the response was disproportionate. 3 police units, 2 news crews, and overhead a figure in a blue suit descending from the sky like judgment made flesh. Homelander landed with deliberate gentleness. The cameras swung toward him immediately. He raised both hands in a calming gesture, his smile widening. Even from a distance, Sukuna could read the performance. This wasn't about stopping the protest. It was about being seen stopping the protest. "Folks, I understand your concerns." Homelander's voice carried across the street, amplified by news microphones and his own projection. "Believe me, I understand. But disrupting traffic, making honest people late for work, that's not the American way. That's chaos. And I don't allow chaos in my city. My city. Not our city. Not the people's city. Mine." The protesters hesitated. Some lowered their signs. Others raised phones, recording everything. Homelander's smile never wavered, but Sukuna noticed the way his jaw tightened when someone shouted a question about Vought's latest scandal. "I'm here to keep you safe." Homelander continued, his tone shifting toward something harder. "All of you. Even the ones who don't appreciate it. Now I'm asking nicely. Disperse. Go home. Let me do my job." It wasn't a request. Everyone heard the threat underneath. The protest dissolved within minutes. Homelander stayed until the last person left, maintaining his smile for the cameras. Then he rose back into the sky, cape billowing the image of perfect control. Sukuna watched him go. Interesting. Power constrained by perception. Strength leashed by the need for approval. In Sukuna's era, gods had commanded through terror and awe, not through carefully managed public relations. This world had found a way to domesticate even its strongest creatures. He descended from the parking garage and continued his reconnaissance. The city told stories everywhere if you knew how to listen. Billboards advertised Vought products, movies, merchandise. Every storefront had at least one 7-branded item. Coffee mugs, action figures, clothing. The commodification of power. A bar on the corner was showing footage of another soup, this one dealing with a hostage situation in Queens. The news anchor provided breathless commentary about bravery, heroism, the unwavering dedication of America's protectors. The bar's patrons watched with expressions ranging from adoration to exhaustion. Sukuna entered. The bartender looked up briefly, registered someone new, went back to wiping glasses. Normal business. Nothing remarkable about another face in the crowd. What'll it be? The bartender's tone suggested he'd rather be anywhere else. Information. Sukuna sat down, his voice quiet enough that only the bartender could hear. About the gods you worship here. The bartender's expression shifted to wary amusement. You mean soups? They're not gods, buddy. They're just people with better PR. Are they? Sukuna gestured toward the television. Your media treats them as infallible. Your citizens wear their symbols. They police your streets, enforce your order, and you pay for the privilege. Yeah, well. The bartender poured himself a shot, drank it. That's Vought for you. They figured out how to monetize everything, including safety. You want a drink or a philosophy lecture? Sukuna smiled. Neither. I want to understand the rules of this world before I break them. The bartender's expression went from wary to concerned. Listen, buddy, I don't know what you're planning, but if you're thinking about causing trouble... He didn't finish the sentence. Couldn't. Sukuna's hand moved faster than human eyes could follow fingers brushing the bartender's wrist with just enough pressure to convey absolute certainty. Not a threat. A promise. I'm not planning anything, Sukuna said softly. I'm simply observing. But tell me what happens when your gods fail. When the cameras capture something, they can't spin. What then? The bartender pulled his hand back slowly. Then Vought makes it disappear. They're good at that. Fascinating. Sukuna stood. Thank you for the lesson. He left the bar and walked deeper into the city. Night was falling. The screens grew brighter, compensating for the darkness. More faces, more promises, more gods selling salvation one advertisement at a time. His senses, sharper than human perception, tracked the ambient energy of 8 million compressed lives. Fear, desire, exhaustion, hope, all of it vibrating through the concrete and steel. And underneath it all, the structure, the system, the carefully maintained illusion that everything was controlled, protected, safe. Sukuna had seen empires rise and fall, had watched civilizations collapse under their own weight. This one was different in execution, but identical in essence. Power concentrated among the few maintained through spectacle and violence sustained by the masses who had forgotten what true strength looked like. He found what he was looking for 3 hours after sunset. A soup operating alone, no cameras, no crowds. Just enhanced muscle doing what Vought really paid for. Intimidation. This one was collecting protection money from a series of immigrant-owned businesses, his cape and costume marking him as officially sanctioned despite the unofficial nature of his work. The Soupe's powers were unremarkable. Enhanced strength, moderate durability, nothing that would get him on the main roster. A minor god performing minor divine acts. He left the fourth business counting cash, not bothering to hide it. Sukuna stepped out of an alley. The soup barely glanced at him. Move along, citizen. Official Vought business. Is it? Sukuna's tone was mild curious. It looks more like theft with a costume. The soup's expression hardened. You got a problem, take it up with Vought customer service. Otherwise, keep walking. I do have a problem. Sukuna took a step closer. You're pretending to be something you're not. That offends me. The soup laughed. Actually laughed. Then he threw a punch that would have shattered concrete. Sukuna didn't dodge. Didn't block. He simply moved his head 3 inches to the left, let the fist pass, and placed 2 fingers against the Soupe's chest. Not hard. Barely contact at all. The soup staggered backward, confusion replacing confidence. What the? His chest opened. Not exploding, not tearing. Just opening as if invisible blades had carved through costume flesh and bone with surgical precision. The Soupy looked down at himself, saw what shouldn't be possible, tried to scream. Sukuna caught him before he could fall, held him upright with one hand. Leaned close enough to whisper, Your gods need audiences. They need cameras' approval love. I need nothing but this moment. Remember that difference in whatever comes next. He let the body drop. Stood over it for 3 seconds, watching life fade. Then he arranged it carefully. Sitting position back against the wall, head tilted up toward the sky. Arms spread like a plea or a blessing. the wounds too precise to be accidental, too deliberate to be anything but a message. Sukuna walked away without looking back. Behind him, the first person to discover the scene would scream. Police would arrive. Vought security would attempt containment. News would leak despite every effort at suppression. And somewhere in a tower made of glass and arrogance, someone would realize that their narrative was no longer the only one being written. He found another rooftop, this one overlooking Times Square. Thousands of screens showing thousands of lies. Below, crowds flowed like rivers, each person convinced they lived in a world that made sense. Sukuna sat down and waited. Not for anything specific, just waited. Patient, amused, certain. This world had built itself on a foundation of manufactured gods and controlled chaos. Had convinced itself that power could be packaged, branded, sold. That strength was something you performed rather than possessed. He would show them otherwise, not through speeches or declarations, not through conquest or ideology, simply through existence. Through the inevitable collision between their carefully constructed illusion and the reality standing in its way. The city hummed beneath him, alive, vibrant, fragile. Sukuna smiled and waited for dawn. The body was discovered at 6:43 in the morning by a sanitation worker who would spend the next 3 months in therapy. By 7:15, Vaught's crisis team had cordoned off the entire block. By 8, 3 separate news crews had leaked footage before their cameras could be confiscated. Ashley watched the video on her tablet for the 5th time, each viewing adding another layer to her migraine. The soup sat against the wall like a broken puppet chest cavity opened with impossible precision. No blood spatter, no signs of struggle. Just surgical violence arranged for maximum visual impact. It's him. Marcus Reeves stood by the window, watching police establish a perimeter 3 floors below. Subject 17. Has to be. We don't know that. Ashley's voice sounded hollow even to herself. Ashley. Reeves turned to face her. Look at the wounds. Those aren't bullet holes or knife cuts. That's something else. Something we don't have a category for. Her phone buzzed. Another message from Homelander. Saw the news. Why wasn't I informed? She ignored it, buying herself 30 seconds of false peace. What do we tell the public? Dr. Vance asked. She'd been summoned from R&D still wearing yesterday's clothes. Another soup gang violence terrorist attack. We tell them nothing until we have something that sounds true. Ashley pulled up the damage control protocol on her screen. Standard procedure for soup-related incidents. Except this wasn't standard. Nothing about this was standard. Her phone rang. Homelander's private line. No more avoiding it. I'm in the middle of... You're in the middle of lying to me. His voice was pleasant. Dangerous. There's a dead soup in Manhattan. Killed in a way that shouldn't be possible. And you're going to explain why I'm learning about this from the news instead of you. Ashley closed her eyes, made the calculation she'd been avoiding. We have a situation. Enhanced individual, possibly the one from the offshore facility. He's targeting soups. Silence on the other end. She could hear him breathing. Targeting us. Not a question. A realization that fed directly into every paranoid fantasy he'd been nursing. Someone is hunting soups. We don't know his intentions. I know his intentions. Homelander's voice went flat. Cold. He killed one of ours and left him on display. That's a message. And I'm going to deliver a response. Wait, we should coordinate with... The line went dead. Ashley stared at her phone. Felt control slipping through her fingers like water. She'd spent years building systems, protocols, procedures designed to manage chaos. But chaos didn't follow protocols. It just happened faster than you could spin it. He's going himself, isn't he? Reeves already knew the answer. Get the 7 together? Ashley's voice came out steadier than she felt. Full tactical deployment. Cameras on every angle. If this goes public, we control the narrative. And if Homelander goes off script, then we edit aggressively and hope people believe what we tell them instead of what they see. 90 minutes later, the 7 assembled in downtown Manhattan. Not all of them. A-Train was on medical leave. Black Noir was on assignment overseas. But Homelander, Starlight, Maeve, and the Deep created enough visual presence for the cameras Vought had positioned at strategic angles. Homelander stood at the center cape, moving in wind that seemed to arrive on cue. Behind him, his teammates arranged themselves in formation designed by PR consultants. Strong, united, inevitable. We're here to find the individual responsible for last night's attack, Homelander announced, speaking directly to the closest camera. And when we find him, justice will be swift and absolute. The Deep nodded with practiced enthusiasm. Starlight looked uncomfortable, but maintained her position. Maeve watched Homelander with an expression that suggested she'd stopped believing in anything years ago. They moved through the city in a formation designed to look spontaneous while actually following a predetermined route. Cameras tracked every step. News helicopters circled overhead. Social media exploded with sightings, commentary speculation. Homelander led them to the alley where the body had been found. Cleanup crews had already removed the physical evidence, but the scene remained cordoned off. He stood at the center using his enhanced vision to scan for clues that probably didn't exist. Anything? Starlight asked quietly. Nothing. He covered his tracks. Homelander's jaw tightened. Or he doesn't care about being tracked. Which is worse, the Deep's attempt at tactical analysis fell flat. Before Homelander could answer, his hearing caught something. A sound 3 blocks north. Not a scream, not violence, just laughter. Quiet, amused. The same laugh he'd almost heard the night before. Found him. Homelander took off without warning, leaving his team scrambling to follow. He landed in a construction zone, one of Manhattan's perpetual rebuild projects. Empty except for equipment and materials. And standing in the center, examining a steel beam like it was vaguely interesting, was Subject 17, except it wasn't. Not anymore. The man who turned to face him wore 17's features, but nothing else about him matched. The posture, the expression, the complete absence of fear when confronted by 7 feet of flying rage. You're fast. Sukuna's tone suggested mild approval. I wondered how long it would take. Homelander landed 20 feet away. Close enough to intimidate, far enough to assess. You killed one of ours. I killed a thief wearing a costume. Does that qualify as yours? The rest of the 7 arrived, forming a loose perimeter. Starlight's hands began to glow. The Deep looked confused about what he was supposed to be doing. Maeve simply watched her expression, unreadable. Last chance. Homelander's voice dropped to the register he used before violence. Surrender now, or we bring you in the hard way. Bring me in. Sukuna repeated the phrase like he was testing how it tasted. You speak as if you have authority here. As if you represent order, rather than a corporate brand with delusions of divinity. Homelander's eyes began to glow red. You have no idea who you're talking to. I know exactly who I'm talking to. Sukuna took 3 steps forward, casual, unhurried. I'm talking to a manufactured god who needs constant reassurance of his own significance. A creature of extraordinary power and ordinary insecurities. You wear that costume because without it, you're just another broken thing pretending to be whole. The heat vision came without warning. Full power aimed directly at Sukuna's head. The kind of blast that could cut through tank armor. Sukuna moved his head 6 inches left. The beam passed close enough that his hair should have ignited. Didn't. He stood in the afterglow, completely unbothered, and smiled. You missed. Homelander stared. In 15 years of being the strongest thing in any room, he'd never missed from 20 feet. Starlight flank left. Deep, you're... Homelander didn't finish the tactical instruction. He launched himself forward, fist cocked back, moving at speeds that turned air into resistance. The punch should have connected, should have driven Sukuna through 3 buildings. Instead, Homelander hit nothing. Sukuna had moved not away, but sideways, his motion too precise to be reaction. Like he'd known where the punch would be before it started. Predictable. Sukuna's hand came up 2 fingers extended and touched Homelander's shoulder as he passed. The cape tore, not burned, not ripped, just separated along a perfectly straight line, the fabric falling away in 2 pieces. Homelander spun, backing up 5 feet, looking at his severed cape with an expression somewhere between confusion and rage. "What did you—" "I cut it." Sukuna lowered his hand. "To show you that I can. Your durability, your strength, your entire image of invincibility, it only works against people who believe in it. I don't." Starlight fired a blast of energy. Sukuna didn't dodge this time. He raised one hand and the blast curved around him, like water around stone, dissipating harmlessly into the walls. "Try harder." The deep charged next, his enhanced strength carrying him forward in what might have been bravery or stupidity. Sukuna waited until the last second, then placed his palm against the Deep's chest. Gently, almost kindly. The Deep flew backward 60 feet, crashed through a portable office, and didn't get up. Maeve moved, then not attacking but positioning herself between Sukuna and Starlight. Her expression suggested this was obligation, not conviction. "Stand down," Homelander's voice came out strained. "Both of you. This is mine." He rose into the air, putting distance between himself and the ground. Smart. Use mobility. Use range. Use every advantage available. Sukuna watched him ascend, made no move to follow or pursue. "You're faster than I am," Homelander called down. "I'll give you that. But you can't fly. Can't chase me. Can't stop me from burning you from up here." "True," Sukuna nodded. "But you won't. Watch me." "You won't," Sukuna repeated. "Because there are cameras everywhere. And if you incinerate a man from 50 feet up, if you kill someone who hasn't killed anyone on camera, your audience will see what you really are. Not a hero. Just a monster with good publicity." Homelander's eyes flared. The heat built visible distortion in the air. He was 3 seconds from firing when his hearing caught it. Police sirens. News helicopters getting closer. Vought security teams responding. And underneath it all, the constant hum of recording devices, phones, cameras, the city watching. He lowered himself back to ground level, landed 20 feet from Sukuna. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from rage, from the awareness that every move was being watched, judged, recorded. "This isn't over." "Of course not." Sukuna's smile widened. "But you're leaving anyway. Because your handlers are screaming in your earpiece. Because your image is more important than your pride. Because you were built to perform, not to fight." Homelander wanted to respond. Wanted to tear this man apart and prove every word wrong. Instead, he turned to his team. "Fall back. We're regrouping." "But down to you," Starlight started. "I said fall back." They retreated. Professional. Tactical. Leaving Sukuna standing alone in the construction zone as cameras captured everything from a dozen angles. Sukuna waited until they were gone. Then he picked up the 2 pieces of Homelander's cape. Examined the cut edge. Perfect. Clean. Exactly as intended. He left both pieces draped over a steel beam. A trophy. A reminder. A promise. When Vaught's cleanup team arrived 10 minutes later, they found an empty construction site, no evidence of violence, and footage that would require 14 hours of editing before it could be safely broadcast. Ashley watched the raw recordings in her office. Watched Homelander miss. Watched his cape get cut. Watched him retreat because the cameras demanded it. She made 7 phone calls in the next hour. 3 to media outlets who needed their silence purchased. 2 to legal teams preparing liability defenses, 1 to the PR department to craft a narrative that turned retreat into strategic withdrawal. The last call was to a private number. Someone outside Vought's official structure. Someone who specialized in problems that couldn't be solved through legal means. "We need containment," she said when the voice answered. "Full spectrum, whatever it costs." The voice on the other end quoted a price that would never appear in any official budget. Ashley agreed without hesitation. Control, narrative, survival. Those were the only things that mattered. And right now, all three were slipping away. Homelander stood in his penthouse apartment, staring at his reflection in the floor-to-ceiling window. The city sprawled below 8 million people living their compressed lives, unaware that their protector was currently wondering if he was strong enough to protect them or himself. The cape was replaceable. Vought had backups. But the image of it falling in 2 perfect pieces played on loop in his mind. The precision of it. The ease. Like cutting paper. His phone had been ringing for 2 hours. Ashley. Stan Edgar's replacement. Various handlers and PR strategists. He'd ignored all of them. What could they possibly say that would change the fundamental equation? Someone existed who could touch him, cut him, treat him like he was ordinary. Unacceptable. His hearing picked up the approach before his eyes did. Footsteps on the exterior of the building. Not climbing, walking. Casual, like physics was a suggestion rather than a law. Homelander turned from the window and waited. Sukuna stepped through the balcony door without opening it. The glass simply wasn't there for a moment, then was again undamaged. He looked around the apartment with the same mild interest he'd shown the steel beam earlier. Interesting. Sukuna's gaze took in the minimalist furniture the awards arranged for maximum visibility. The photographs of Homelander with various dignitaries and celebrities. You've built a shrine to yourself. Most gods require their followers to do that. "How did you find me?" Homelander's voice was controlled. "Barely. I followed you. You flew here directly after our encounter. Not particularly subtle. The building has security, cameras, guards." "Yes." Sukuna moved to the window, looked out at the city. "They didn't see me because I chose not to be seen. Your security exists to manage normal threats. I'm not that." Homelander felt his hands curl into fists. "You came here to gloat." "No, I came here because you interest me." Sukuna turned to face him. "Most of the enhanced individuals in this city are products. Manufactured strength given to people who never earned it. But you're different. You were born this way, weren't you? Designed, engineered, made in a laboratory to be perfect. I am perfect. You're a prototype." Sukuna's tone wasn't mocking, just observational. An experiment in creating artificial divinity. They gave you power and expected gratitude. Instead, they got exactly what they feared. Someone strong enough to refuse the leash. Homelander's eyes began to glow. "You don't know anything about me. I know everything about you." Sukuna walked closer, each step deliberate. "You crave adoration. You perform heroism. And you've never met anyone you couldn't kill." He paused. "Until today." The heat vision fired. Full power. Both eyes. Enough concentrated energy to melt through bank vaults. Sukuna raised one hand. The beam split around his palm, scorching the walls on either side, but never touching him. He held the position for 3 seconds, letting Homelander expend energy, then lowered his hand. The silence that followed was worse than any impact. "You're afraid." Sukuna said it like a diagnosis. Not of me specifically, of what I represent. Proof that your strength isn't absolute. That you can be challenged. That the pedestal you stand on is shorter than you believed. Homelander moved. No warning, no preamble. Closed the distance in microseconds, fist aimed at Sukuna's head with enough force to shatter concrete. Sukuna caught his wrist. The impact should have driven them both through the floor. Should have generated a shockwave. Instead, they simply stopped. Homelander's fist held firmly in Sukuna's grip. You rely on overwhelming power. Sukuna's voice remained calm. But I've fought gods. Real ones. You're not in that category. Homelander pulled back, breaking the grip. Put 20 feet between them. His mind raced through options, strategies, approaches. Everything came back to the same conclusion. This shouldn't be possible. What are you? I'm what you pretend to be. Sukuna gestured toward the photographs on the wall. You need audiences. I need nothing. Everyone needs something. Do they? Sukuna tilted his head. What do I need from this world? Your corporate masters thought they could control another asset, another product, and instead they got a monster. No. Sukuna's smile was sharp. They already had a monster. You. They just dressed him up and taught him to smile. I'm simply honest about what I am. Homelander felt something crack inside his chest. Not physical. Worse. The careful construction he'd built around himself, the narrative he'd maintained for decades. All of it fracturing under the weight of someone who saw through it completely. I could kill you. His voice came out quieter than intended. I could burn you, crush you, throw you into orbit. You could try? Sukuna moved to the couch, sat down like he'd been invited. But you won't. I'm currently the only honest thing in your life. Then what do you want? From you, nothing. Sukuna leaned back, completely relaxed, in the home of someone who could kill most people with a glance. You exist because a corporation decided it. I exist because I refuse not to. Homelander felt his control slipping, the rage building. You're going to regret this conversation. Regret requires caring about outcomes. I don't. Sukuna walked back toward the balcony. But let me offer you something, since you seem determined to view this as a conflict. Tomorrow night, midnight, the location of your choosing. Bring whoever you want. Do whatever you think will work. And I'll show you exactly how far beneath me you really are. You're challenging me. I'm offering you a stage. Sukuna paused at the threshold. You love performing, so perform. Gather your followers. Broadcast it, and when you lose in front of everyone, you'll understand. What's that? Power without need is the only power that matters. Sukuna stepped through the doorway and was gone. Not flying, not running, just absent like he'd never been there at all. Homelander stood alone in his apartment, surrounded by awards and photographs and evidence of a life spent proving himself to people who would never truly see him. His hands were still shaking. Not from fear, from something worse. Recognition. He pulled out his phone, called Ashley. I need Vought Tower cleared tomorrow night. Midnight. Full media blackout until I give the signal. What? Why? Ashley's voice carried the exhaustion of someone who hadn't slept in 48 hours. Because I'm ending this, and I'm doing it where everyone can see. Homelander, if you're planning what I think, I'm planning to remind this world who I am. That's all. He ended the call before she could argue. Then he made another call. This one to the 7's emergency line. Full team deployment, tomorrow night. Vought Tower, combat situation. Maeve's voice came back skeptical. Against one target, against someone who thinks he's stronger than all of us combined. We're going to prove him wrong. He ended that call too. Looked back at his reflection in the window. The city lights made him glow, made him look divine, made him appear exactly as designed. Tomorrow night, he would prove that design was enough. That manufactured divinity was still divinity. That he was everything he claimed to be. The alternative was unthinkable. Across the city in a hotel room that would charge someone's corporate card for damages that would never be explained. Sukuna sat by the window and watched dawn approach. Homelander would bring everyone. Would choose a location that maximized his advantage. would broadcast it all because his ego demanded witnesses. Perfect. The sun crept over the horizon, painting the city in shades of amber and gold. Sukuna watched it with the patience of someone who had seen countless dawns. Tomorrow night would be educational. He closed his eyes and let the hours pass. Patient. Certain. Waiting for midnight the way a predator waits for prey to step into the perfect position. Billy Butcher had learned long ago that the difference between a hero and a villain was mostly timing and better marketing. He'd also learned that when you needed to kill a god, you couldn't be picky about your weapons. He found Sukuna 3 hours before midnight in a place that shouldn't have been accessible. An abandoned subway station sealed off after the last renovation project ran out of funding. No cameras, no witnesses, just darkness and the smell of rust. Sukuna sat on a concrete platform watching the tunnel like something might emerge from it. He didn't turn when Butcher's footsteps echoed through the station. You're either very brave or very stupid. Sukuna's voice carried easily despite not being raised. Most people who find me don't announce themselves. Most people ain't looking to have a chat. Butcher stopped 20 feet back, close enough to be heard far enough to maybe survive if this went wrong. They're too busy shitting themselves, and you're not afraid. Oh, I'm fucking terrified, mate. Butcher's accent thickened the way it always did when he was managing fear. But fear's just information. Tells you something's dangerous. Doesn't tell you to run. Sukuna turned then, his expression mildly curious. You're not with Vought. Your clothing suggests military background, but your posture says you've spent too long outside official channels. And your heartbeat indicates chemical enhancement, though not their standard formula. Done your homework. Observation. But you didn't answer my question. Why announce yourself? Butcher pulled a flask from his jacket, took a drink, offered it toward Sukuna. When no response came, he took another pull. Because I want to make you an offer. Or maybe a suggestion. Semantics get fuzzy when you're proposing mass murder. I'm listening. Homelanders gathered the 7 at Vought Tower. Midnight. Full display of corporate superhero might. He's going to try to put you down in front of the whole world. I know, I suggested it. Butcher smiled without humor. Yeah, I figured. You got that look about you. The kind that knows how to bait a trap. Thing is, I've been trying to kill that cunt for years. Got close a few times. Never close enough. And you think I'll succeed where you failed. I think you already have. Butcher gestured vaguely upward toward the city. You cut his cape. Made him bleed. Made him run. Nobody's done that. Not once in his entire fucking life. So yeah, I think you can finish what I started. Why would I? The question was simple. Direct. Butcher had prepared for complicated philosophy or demands. Not this. Because he's everything you said he was. A monster in a costume. A corporate product pretending to be divine. And because when you break him, you break Vought. You break the entire system they built to control people through fear and spectacle. You assume I care about their system. No. Butcher took another drink. I assume you care about proving a point. That's what tonight is, yeah. A demonstration, showing them their gods ain't what they think. Sukuna stood moved closer with that unsettling fluidity that made Butcher's enhanced reflexes scream warnings. You're intelligent enough to be dangerous, desperate enough to be useful, and damaged enough to think allying with me serves your interests. Does it? No. Sukuna stopped 5 feet away. I don't form alliances. Don't share goals or coordinate strategies. What I do for my own reasons. Then why are you listening? Because you interest me. You hate Homelander with a kind of purity that transcends reason. Personal, consuming. The hatred of someone who lost something that can't be replaced. Butcher's jaw tightened. You don't know shit about what I lost. I know enough. I can see it in how you stand, how you breathe, how every word carries the weight of something you're trying to avenge. Sukuna tilted his head slightly. But here's what you're not understanding. I don't need your permission, your guidance, or your blessing. Tonight happens whether you approve or not. I ain't here to approve. I'm here to make sure you understand what he deserves. He deserves nothing. Deserving implies a cosmic justice I don't believe in. Sukuna's tone remained flat, educational. He simply exists as an obstacle to clarity, and obstacles get removed. Butcher studied him. This close, the wrongness was more apparent. The way Sukuna's eyes tracked movement too precisely. The complete absence of nervous tics or unconscious adjustments. Like watching something wearing human shape without quite understanding how humans worked. You're going to kill him. Probably not. Death would be a release. I'm going to break him in front of everyone who ever believed in him. Let them see what they've been worshipping. Then whatever comes after will be his to endure. Christ. Butcher laughed, sharp and bitter. You're worse than me. No. I'm honest about what I am. You pretend your violence serves a higher purpose. That you're fighting for justice or protection or some other comfortable lie. But really, you just want revenge. And you don't care who burns, as long as he does. The words landed like physical blows. Butcher felt his hands curl into fists, felt the familiar rage building. Fuck you. See honest. Sukuna turned back toward the tunnel. Tonight you'll get what you want. Homelander broken. Vaught's credibility destroyed. The system you hate exposed for what it is, but don't pretend you had any hand in it. You're not the weapon. You're just the audience. And after... Butcher's voice came out rougher than intended. After you've made your point and scattered their pieces, what then? That depends on what interests me next. The implications settled heavy. Butcher had spent years learning to calculate acceptable losses to weigh necessary evils against desired outcomes. This was beyond calculation. This was opening a door and hoping whatever came through killed the right people first. Huey and MM, Butcher said quietly. My team. They're going to try to stop me from being here. From doing this. Will they succeed? No. Then their concern is irrelevant. Butcher pulled out his phone, checked the time. 2 hours and 43 minutes until midnight. Enough time to get to Vought Tower. Enough time to watch it happen. Not enough time to change his mind. One question, he said. And I want a straight answer. Are you going to stop with Homelander, or is this just the start? Sukuna considered the question with the same mild interest he'd shown everything else. I don't make promises about the future. I exist in the present, and the present amuses me. Whether that continues depends on how interesting this world remains. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting. Butcher nodded slowly. He'd made worse bets on worse information. Right then. I'll be watching from street level. Got a good vantage point picked out. If you need anything, I won't. Yeah, figured. Butcher turned to leave, then paused. Just so we're clear, if you go after innocent people, if you hurt my crew, I will find a way to end you, even if it kills me. You won't have to. Sukuna's voice carried a note of something that might have been amusement. I don't prey on the weak. There's no satisfaction in it. The strong, the arrogant, the ones who believe themselves untouchable, those interest me. Everyone else is just scenery. Comforting. It wasn't meant to be. Butcher left the station, climbed back up to street level, where Manhattan hummed with oblivious evening traffic. His phone showed 3 missed calls from Huey, 2 from MM. He deleted the notifications without listening to the voicemails. Some decisions couldn't be explained, only made and lived with. He found a bar 6 blocks from Vought Tower, ordered a double whiskey, and checked the news on his phone. Coverage of tonight's event was already building. Vought had leaked just enough information to generate massive public interest. A threat to national security. The 7 responding with overwhelming force. Justice served live for everyone to witness. The bartender, a tired woman in her 50s who'd seen too many New York nights, noticed his expression. "You okay?" "No." Butcher drank half the whiskey in one swallow. "But I will be. Few hours from now, I'll either be the happiest man in this city or dead. Either way's better than where I am now." She refilled his glass without comment. Across the bar, a television showed aerial footage of Vought Tower. Spotlights illuminated the building from every angle. News helicopters circled at a safe distance. The city held its breath, waiting for the show to begin. Butcher finished his second drink and headed for his vantage point. A parking garage 3 blocks away, with a clear line of sight to the tower. He'd scouted it 2 days ago, before any of this started, back when his plans for killing Homelander involved more conventional weapons and less apocalyptic allies. He climbed to the top level, found his spot, and waited. In his pocket, his phone buzzed. Calling again. Butcher let it ring until voicemail picked up. Then he turned the phone off entirely. No more warnings. No more debates about lines that shouldn't be crossed. He'd crossed them all already. Now he just needed to see if it was worth it. Midnight arrived with the precision of a corporate deadline. Vought Tower stood illuminated against the Manhattan skyline, every window lit, every surface gleaming. The plaza below had been cleared of civilians under the guise of a security threat, which was technically accurate. Barriers kept the crowds 3 blocks back, but that didn't stop thousands from gathering. Phones raised, cameras recording. Everyone wanting to witness the moment America's greatest heroes put down whatever threat had dared to challenge them. News helicopters circled at approved altitudes. 3 major networks broadcasting live. Social media exploding with speculation, commentary, hot takes. The spectacle Homelander had demanded delivered exactly as ordered. Ashley watched from the Vought Command Center on the 68th floor, surrounded by monitors showing every angle. Her hands shook despite the beta blockers she'd taken an hour ago. This was either going to be the greatest PR victory in Vought history, or the end of everything they'd built. "The 7 are in position," Marcus Reeves reported from his console. "Homelander's given the all-clear to begin." On the main screen, the 7 stood arranged in formation on the tower's main entrance platform. Homelander at the center cape replaced costume perfect. Starlight to his left, looking uncomfortable but present. Maeve to his right, expression unreadable. The Deep A train having miraculously recovered enough to attend, and 2 backup soups whose names Ashley could never remember completing the line. They looked invincible. 7 gods waiting to dispense justice. Ashley wanted to believe the image, wanted to trust that overwhelming force would be enough, that Homelander's rage channeled through tactical superiority would end this nightmare. She didn't. Homelander's voice boomed across the plaza, amplified by strategically placed speakers. "To the individual who has threatened this city, who has murdered one of our own, who believes himself above the law, we are here. Face us now, or we will find you and drag you to justice." The crowd roared approval, chants of support, American flags waving. The theater of heroism performing exactly as scripted. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then Sukuna walked out of the lobby, not from the street, not from the air. From inside the building, like he'd been there all along. Security footage would later show no entry point, no breach, no explanation. He simply appeared in the lobby and walked through the main doors. He moved with the casual ease of someone arriving for an appointment rather than a battle. No costume, no weapons. Just a man in dark clothing who somehow commanded more presence than 7 enhanced beings combined. The cameras found him immediately. Every screen in the command center, every broadcast, every phone in the crowd, suddenly focused on this singular figure walking toward overwhelming opposition. Homelander's expression shifted. Confidence giving way to something harder. "You came. You invited me?" Sukuna stopped 30 feet from the formation. It would have been rude to decline. Last chance. Surrender now, face trial, and you might live. No, the simplicity of it hung in the air. No bravado, no declaration, just refusal. Homelander's eyes glowed red. Then you die here. We'll see. The heat vision fired. Both beams full power aimed directly at Sukuna's center mass. The kind of blast that had once cut a passenger jet in half. Sukuna raised his right hand palm forward. The beams curved. Not deflected, not blocked. They simply bent around him like water around stone, scorching the pavement on either side, but never touching him. The energy dissipated harmlessly into the night air. The crowd's cheers faltered. Confusion rippling through thousands of people simultaneously. Starlight fired next. Concentrated light energy enough to blind anyone looking directly at it. Sukuna moved his head 3 inches. The blast passed and detonated against the plaza fountain, vaporizing water into steam. A-Train accelerated. Enhanced speed carrying him in a blur toward Sukuna's flank. Sukuna's hand moved almost lazy. A-Train stumbled, his momentum broken, looking down at his leg where his costume had been cut in a perfectly straight line. Not through flesh, just the fabric. A warning. He backed off immediately. The Deep charged with enhanced strength. Maeve followed half a second behind her tactical sense, recognizing the futility but obligation demanding she try. Sukuna didn't move. He raised 2 fingers on his left hand. Both soups stopped mid-attack. Not frozen, just stopped. Like invisible walls had materialized in front of them. They pushed against nothing, faces straining before Sukuna lowered his hand, and they staggered backward. "Is this your best?" Sukuna's voice carried despite not being raised. 7 enhanced individuals, and not one of you can touch me. What does that tell the people watching? In the command center, Ashley watched the social media feeds explode. Confusion, panic. The narrative collapsing in real time. Homelander launched himself forward with rage-driven speed. The fight that followed lasted 16 seconds and would be analyzed frame by frame for years afterward. Homelander threw punches that could shatter concrete. Sukuna avoided them by margins of inches. Homelander fired heat vision at point-blank range. Sukuna deflected it with casual hand movements. Homelander tried to grapple to use his superior strength. Sukuna flowed around every attempt like smoke. Then Sukuna struck back, 2 fingers extended. Touched Homelander's shoulder. The costume tore. Not burned, not ripped. Just separated a clean line, exposing skin underneath. Homelander backed off, looking at the damage. "What are you—" Disappointing. Sukuna lowered his hand. "You had every advantage. Numbers, home ground, public support. And you're losing in front of everyone who ever believed in you." Homelander's control shattered. He screamed inarticulate rage and dove forward with everything he had. No technique, no strategy, just fury. Sukuna caught him by the throat mid-flight. The impact should have driven them both through the plaza. Instead, they simply stopped. Homelander, the strongest being in America, held in place by a grip that shouldn't be possible. "Look at them." Sukuna's voice was quiet now, for Homelander only. "Look at your audience." Homelander's eyes tracked to the crowds, the cameras, the thousands of people watching their protector being held like a child, having a tantrum. "This is what you feared most," Sukuna continued. "Not death, not pain. Being revealed as ordinary, as something that can be defeated, can be controlled, can be stopped." He released Homelander. Let him stumble backward. Didn't press the advantage. "Run," Sukuna said. "Or stay. The outcome is the same." Homelander hovered there 5 feet off the ground, every camera in the world on him. His hands shook. His face twisted through expressions too quickly to track. Rage, fear, humiliation, desperation. Then his hearing caught it. The whispers in the crowd. The commentary from news anchors struggling to maintain composure. The social media posts flowing like a river of judgment. He's losing. Homelander's losing. I've never seen him like this. Is he afraid? Homelander rose higher. Put distance between himself and the ground. Between himself and Sukuna. Between himself and the failure happening in real time. This isn't over. His voice cracked slightly. This isn't... He couldn't finish the thought. Couldn't find the words that would restore what was breaking. So he flew. Not away from the city, not dramatically. Just upward into the darkness above the spotlights, until the cameras lost track of him. The remaining 6 stood frozen. Starlight looked at Maeve. Maeve looked at the ground. A-Train was already backing toward the entrance. None of them had signed up for this. None of them knew what to do when the script fell apart. You can leave. Sukuna addressed them directly. This was never about you. They left. Some faster than others. But they left. 7 heroes reduced to 6, then 5, then none. Just empty plaza and watching crowds and Sukuna standing alone under the lights. In the command center, Ashley made her decision. Cut the feeds, all of them, now. We can't, Reeves said. It's being broadcast from 20 different sources we don't control. Then shut down the tower. Kill the power, do something. But it was too late for damage control. The moment had already spread too far. Already been captured. Already been judged. Sukuna tilted his head upward, looking at Vought Tower itself. The 70 floors of corporate power and manufactured divinity. The symbol of everything this world had built its illusions upon. He raised both hands. What happened next would be described in dozens of ways by dozens of witnesses. Some said the air split open. Others claimed reality cracked. Scientists would argue about energy signatures and dimensional breaches for years. What everyone agreed on was the result. The space around Sukuna changed. Not dramatically, not with explosions or light shows, just changed. The air became sharp, cutting. Everything within a radius of 300 feet began to separate, not randomly, not violently, just precisely methodically, inevitably. Concrete split into component pieces. Metal barriers divided into sections. The fountain at the plaza's center came apart layer by layer, like an onion being carefully peeled. Glass from the tower's lower floors cracked in geometric patterns, and it was continuous. Wave after wave of invisible cutting force, not targeted at anything specific, but affecting everything equally. Malevolent Shrine wasn't an attack. It was a statement about the nature of space itself, when Sukuna decided things should come apart. The crowds 3 blocks back felt it. Not pain, just the sudden awareness that staying close meant dying in ways too precise to be survivable. They ran. Thousands of people fleeing at once, creating instant chaos in the surrounding streets. The news helicopters pulled back. Their cameras still rolling, but from much safer distances. Ashley watched her monitors show the plaza being systematically disassembled. Watched the lower floors of Vought Tower start to separate. Watched the symbol of everything she'd worked for being reduced to component pieces in real time. Evacuate the building, she heard herself say. Everyone, now! The evacuation alarm started. People flooded the stairwells. Panic spreading floor by floor as word traveled faster than official channels. In the plaza, Sukuna stood at the center of his domain and let it work. Not controlling every cut, not targeting specific structures, just existing at the center of a radius where things came apart because he wished them to. 3 minutes. That's how long he maintained it. Long enough to hollow out the first 5 floors of Vought Tower. Long enough to turn the plaza into an abstract sculpture of divided materials. Long enough for every camera to capture footage that would run on loop for months. Then he stopped. The cutting ceased. The air returned to normal. The sudden silence was almost worse than the sound of systematic destruction. Sukuna lowered his hands and surveyed his work. The tower still stood, but wounded. The plaza was unrecognizable, and somewhere above Homelander was learning what it meant to be irrelevant to the outcome. Sukuna began walking, not running, not flying, just walking away from Vought Tower like a person leaving an appointment that had run slightly long. The cameras followed him for 2 blocks. Then he turned a corner and was gone. Not vanished, not teleported. Just gone because he chose not to be seen anymore. From his vantage point in the parking garage, Billy Butcher lowered his binoculars. His hands were steady. His breathing was calm. He felt something that might have been satisfaction or might have been horror. Possibly both. Homelander was broken. Vaught's credibility was destroyed. The system had been exposed as hollow, and Butcher had helped make it happen. He climbed down from the garage, walked through streets full of panicking crowds, and overwhelmed emergency services, and disappeared into the chaos. No one stopped him. No one noticed him. Everyone was too busy processing what they'd witnessed. In the command center, Ashley sat at her desk and stared at the monitors showing the aftermath. Emergency services arriving. News anchors struggling to contextualize what had happened. Social media already generating conspiracy theories and hot takes and demands for accountability. Her phone rang. The board of directors. She didn't answer. It rang again. Federal agencies. She let it go to voicemail. It rang a 3rd time. Media relations requesting immediate statement. She powered the phone off and sat in the sudden silence. Outside her window, Manhattan continued its night. 8 million people living compressed lives, now aware that the protection they'd been promised was an illusion. That their gods could be challenged. That the order they'd trusted was more fragile than anyone had admitted. In a hotel room that would bill damages to an account that didn't exist. Sukuna watched the news coverage with mild interest. They were trying to control the narrative, spinning explanations, attempting to restore the illusion that had been broken. It wouldn't work, not after tonight. He turned off the television and looked out at the city. So many lights. So many people. So many small desperations and quiet fears. Perhaps he'd stay a while longer. See what this world did now that its comfortable lies had been stripped away. Or perhaps he'd leave it tomorrow. Move on. Let them rebuild their illusions or face reality without him. The choice was his. It always had been. From this story, I took away 3 lessons. First, disasters almost always start with capitalist corporations that think they're smarter than the consequences. Second, this one's for Homelander when you run into someone who clearly operates outside your power system. Don't get cocky and charge in like you own the place. And third, TikTokers are great at looking impressive. But that's usually where their usefulness ends.